Basically, I'm a bog standard parish priest. I'm a vicar of a large church in North Wales, St Giles in Wrexham. So most of my job is taken up with running St Giles. But in addition to that, I get called out to do deliverance work. So we tend to call it deliverance work rather than exorcism, rather than being an exorcist.
So I'm joined by Reverend Jason Bray, who is an exorcist, or to use the correct term, a Deliverance Minister. And you've written an excellent book called Deliverance, which is all about your work. And I'm a skeptic and an atheist. So, you know, I'm the last person that you'd expect to enjoy your book, but I really did, because I felt it was quite clever in places, because I feel that a skeptic and a believer can almost read it in different ways, because you're not quick to jump to the supernatural conclusion. And, you know, a lot of it is left to the reader to make their own mind up on these cases.
Yeah, I had a really intriguing encounter with somebody who lives locally, who sort of came up to me and said, "I really enjoyed your book. I've read it twice, and I still don't know whether you believe in ghosts." So it was okay, right? It was quite intriguing, the fact that somebody had sort of looked and thought, well, actually didn't say whether he did or not, and then sort of went back to the beginning. So yeah, I allow people to draw their own conclusions. You're perfectly right, Steve. Yeah, and that's what, I'm not sort of, I'm not here to impose my own views.
Is there even a requirement for an exorcist to believe in the supernatural and demons and the paranormal?
It helps if you're open to it, to be honest. So, being a healthy skeptic really helps as well. So that you're not immediately looking for, actually this is, you've got a ghost, or you've got a demon or something like that. But on vanishingly rare, somebody might actually be possessed. And knowing that that's a possibility, once you've excluded absolutely everything else, you need actually to sort of be able to deal with that.
Throughout the book, you do often talk about how a lot of cases have kind of more mundane, everyday explanations, and especially poltergeists generally created by the living. A lot of your job seems to be coaching people on relationships and mending relationships in order to kind of fix those problems that are haunting the home, essentially.
Yeah, it can be. So, the classic instance was a sort of mother and son who would basically, that's an ultimate generational divide. And, all sorts of things kicking off in the house. And, they were looking for paranormal explanations, effectively. And what they really needed to do was to sort of build their own relationship. It was, it was as simple as that, or as hard as that, actually, because sometimes you discover that it's easier to look for a paranormal explanation, something that somebody like me can just go zap and it's gone, rather than actually having to do the hard work of sort of relationship building, or in a lot of cases, actually working your way through the mental health system. That can be, it's much easier for somebody to sort of say, "Hey, I've got a demon." You think, no, I don't think you have.
You've also make a point in the book that despite what ghost hunting television shows might tell us, demonic hauntings and possessions are very, very rare.
Yeah, I have never really come across a case that I could say hand on heart is demonic possession. Yeah, it's one of those things that's a theoretical possibility, and once you've discounted absolutely everything else, sort of that's what you might actually be looking for, and that is the only occasion when you would actually perform what you might call a major exorcism, which is basically when you address the demon and say, family audience, I'll refrain from saying the word I was going to say, clear off. And go to the place that that has been prepared for you, and that's really much the only time you would ever use that. But on every other occasion, you're just sort of looking for something else. Yeah, it's really interesting. People come to me quite often and say, "I'm possessed." Yeah, and it's sort of almost axiomatically you can say, "Actually, I know you're not," because we are having this conversation.
Yeah.
If you were actually possessed, if your entire being was taken over by something that was controlling you, which is actually what possession means, isn't it? possessed. But actually that entity would not allow you to have this conversation with me. And sometimes people accept it when they say, "Oh, okay, so I need to take my tablets too." Like, yep. Sometimes people will basically argue back and say, "No, I'm definitely possessed. This is not. I'm not schizophrenic. It's when I hear voices, it's just definitely something, sort of an entity outside myself." And then you start to sort of, it becomes really difficult, really tough talking to people in that sort of attitude.
Is there a kind of element of almost a sort of spiritual placebo in some of your cases?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. One of the things that we do is we pray with people. We bless their houses.
Yeah.
So 9 times out of 10, actually just going and blessing the house and saying it's gone, sort of works basically. And it is a sort of placebo effect. Although, as a Christian, I sort of believe that God has some sort of say in that sort of thing.
Because in the book, you talk about making sure you've got the kind of right image of confidence going into cases and things like that as well. So I guess that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. But there's also, because when I go to see people, they're usually frightened. So actually, sort of my walking in and saying, "Okay, we've got this," sort of really helps. And, they then relax a bit more. So yeah, I can walk in with the, the black cloak and the hat and the, and, all the other stuff. And I do actually habitually wander around town with a very long black coat and with a trilby. And, it's not because I think I look like the Exorcist. It's because actually, that's sort of, the way I tend to present myself. But when I'm out on one of these cases, I don't usually turn up in that gear and say, "I am the Exorcist." I just said, "Hi, I'm Jason. I'm the person who's being called to fix the tear in the fabric of reality that you've got in your house somewhere. Can you show me where it is, please?"
Where the church do kind of disapprove of the paranormal is in things like use of Ouija boards and essentially necromancy, I guess, because kind of going into a haunted place at night and attempting to talk to the ghosts that might be there.
Yeah, the church has consistently frowned on necromancy. In a sense, it's not so much, I suppose, communicating with the dead, but sort of manipulating the dead into sort of giving you some sort of answer. It's the spiritualist churches, of course, exist, and they're part of the spectrum of Christianity, I suppose. But by and large, the church has always frowned on these things. Ouija boards, interestingly, are a sort of slightly weird case. Sort of how realistic is that? I don't know. It's not something I'd encourage people to do, because I've actually dealt with people who've messed themselves up, spooked themselves out by using Ouija boards. I don't think they've let anything through, because I don't think Ouija boards work in that way. They are not a portal to another universe or to another dimension that things can get through, which is the the Hollywood this sort of TV trope. But at the same time, I have actually sort of sorted out teenagers who basically spook themselves out really badly doing it.
Obviously, it's October, so it's coming up to Halloween. Do you notice a rise in people contacting you at this time of year?
I do, yes. It's usually the media.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We don't experience the rise in cases. I'm aware of the fact that there will be media interest. In terms of actually increasing cases, no, there isn't. They're sort of fairly evenly spread throughout the year.
Do you find if there's a sort of seasonal rise, so when people are stuck at home more, or?
No, not really. There was a bit of a spike after COVID, so it was quite interesting that some deliverance ministers experienced quite a lot of activity actually during COVID. During the long lockdowns, and we didn't. We had no cases at all. But sort of that late autumn after the lockdown, there were more cases.
I personally highly recommend Deliverance. I think it was a really interesting read, and there's definitely something in it for the religious and non-religious believers and skeptics. It was a really good read, lots of little tongue-in-cheek jokes, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you.